My name is Zeev Klein. I'm a general partner at Landmark Ventures. I first of all want to thank Steffi, Yossi, all the organizers at DLD. This is an epic event, and it's a privilege and an honor to be here at the first annual New York Summit. We have an amazing panel here. We're going to talk about venture capital. I think the name of the panel is 20 years backwards, but we're VCs and we want to talk about the future. So we're going to talk about 20 years forwards. But to do that, we'll talk a little bit about the past, the present, and the future. With that, I call it the vocal cord warm-up. I just want everyone to go down the line. Ooh, audio's changing. Go down the line. Maybe just introduce yourself briefly, and by virtue of doing that, a sentence, who you are, what you've done, and maybe a deal or two that you've been involved with, but we'll keep this short.
First of all, I don't want anyone to get optimistic. I'm here with a cane today. Age is not setting in. I have a herniated disc. I don't recommend it for anyone. I'm Alan Patricof. I've been in the venture capital business before probably most people in the audience were born. I started my own firm in 1970, but I was in the business back in the 60s. And we are a firm that specializes as a unique approach of going into venture capital with funds and being dedicated to small funds and staying permanently in small funds and not going through the normal progression of bigger and bigger and bigger.
So we'll come back to that. I think that fund size is a great question. Christoph, please.
My name is Christoph Braun. I'm here, one of the founding partners of Acton Capital. We're based in Munich. We do growth venture investments in the B2C space. So we invest in companies that most of the technology folks in the room probably would find terribly boring, but we like that they have a clear business model that we can understand. And we do this now since 1999, so a tough act to follow after Alan.
Moshe.
My name is Moshe Lichtman. I'm co-founder of a private equity fund called Israel Growth Partners. It's actually a new fund. We finished fundraising 3 months ago. I've actually come from the operational side of the business. I've been in various companies, most of the time actually at Microsoft. I was a member of the exec team there, ran a bunch of businesses in internet, media, consumer software. Been an angel investor since '99, so for a long time, and happy to be here.
Hi everybody, I'm Scott Levine. I'm with Time Warner Investments. Time Warner Investments, we're the strategic arm, venture arm of Time Warner Inc. And we make investments in the digital media space that we think would gives us both good returns, but as well as good insights into the rapidly evolving media ecosystem. Just by way of background, I was actually an engineer by training, and I've done 4 different venture-backed startups over my career. And I've gone back and forth to the buy side, but and mostly in the digital media sector. So it's great to be in the venture business, and it's great to be here.
Wonderful. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about the past. Alan, I apologize to start with you on this question. In the last 20 years, and you've really been a pioneer in the industry.
Let's go back 40 years.
Let's go back 40 years. I wasn't born 40 years ago, so. So let's talk a little bit about what changes have you seen? There's clearly been a sequence of changes, but not just to identify the changes, try to maybe highlight what are the implications today because of those changes.
You know, I unfortunately get asked this every time I speak, what's changed. It really hasn't changed. I mean, the venture capital business is backing entrepreneurs for trying to find the latest, newest, most advanced concepts, and led by very exciting people. I think I would say the major difference is when I started, there was no internet, and there was no mobile phone. And I think that you know, as I always reflect on it, I think is the single, two of the most profound changes, because the ability to communicate, sometimes I wish we didn't have it. All of us have the same problem of, by the time we get back to our office, having another 100 emails. But everything moves a lot faster than it did before. But essentially, we're looking for the same kind of companies, large growth rates led by exciting people.
Moshe, you're a brand new fund, and so you guys obviously see something in the market and you think that your capital is going to outperform some existing funds. As a new fund entering the market, talk a little bit about what are you going to do different than the others that are already playing there?
Yeah, I'll talk about that, and I also want to sort of pick up on Alan's words. You know, I think if you look for some fundamental changes that's happened on the funding side, not on the technology side, there are a lot of technology changes all the time. But on the funding side, I think you're seeing a blurring of the lines between the different types of venture funding. You know, I've been an early stage investor for 15 years. You know, it was very clear what an angel does. It was very clear what a VC fund does. It was very clear what a late stage and a growth fund do. These days, you're seeing funds, primarily venture capital, because of all the criticism, you know, the Kaufman report and so on. You're seeing them trying to sort of expand their strategy. So, you know, in Israel, a lot of the VC funds, and I'm sure it's the same here, are trying to do co-investing with angels. So they are doing a lot of early stage, 250K or 500K type investments to go upstream and pick up the deals before, you know, they lose them. You also see a lot of VCs starting to talk about late stage investing and putting larger checks, you know, 7 million, 10 million, 15 million type investments, which is somewhat of a different model. And it's a very interesting thing that's happening. The technology evolution is such that a lot of startups can just get the funding from angels and then leapfrog and go straight into growth investing. So I think that's a major change that's happened as well in the industry. Specifically about growth investing, I think the landscape from that perspective in Israel is much less developed than in the United States. And you know, my partner, who is Chaim Shani, has been a CEO, a high-tech CEO for many years, and myself, because of my exposure to early stage, identified the fact that a lot of startups in Israel get stuck because they do their VC round, they do the late stage round, and then nobody comes when they get to tens of millions in revenue to help them go to the next level. Now, up until the mid-90s, that wasn't an issue because you could grow organically and then go public with 10 millions in revenue and everything was dandy. The other thing that you know, they could afford back in the mid-90s was the fact that the window of opportunity was pretty long. You know, companies like Microsoft, Google, they could afford to grow organically, slowly grow their business, and nobody would threaten them over a 10-year period. These days, the window of opportunity in many sectors is 3 to 5 years. So if you are not growing fast, you basically lose to someone else who's gotten a large check from a growth fund in the valley, and it's game over. So we identified that, you know, that trend, and we raised, actually it's the largest fundraising from Israeli institutions in history, close to $250 million. They sat on the fence for 10 years. And, you know, I think that finally we got them off the fence. Leumi Bank is this, you know, one of the two largest banks in Israel, put a $70 million anchor investment in our fund. And actually, as part of that, they have decided to, you know, to expand their strategy and focus on, or add another focus on the high-tech industry. They founded a company called Leumi Tech, and we are advisors to that. So we're sort of wearing a couple hats in trying to capitalize on technology in general and the growth investing in particular.
So with regards to what's different in the past, say 20 years ago, there's certainly a difference in how young companies are formed and how quickly they can scale without taking any money or very little amount. For my second startup, it was a venture-backed startup in the late 90s. When we were scaling, and it was an online music retailer, every time we scaled, you saw a guy come in with a huge hand truck and racks of Sun servers, right, going into our data center. And that's what you had to do, and we raised a huge amount of venture money, and you had to cut those checks, and you had to get these racks of gear. Right? Clearly, startups don't have to do that today. They can scale, you know, using variable costs of Amazon or Microsoft or whomever, and get to pretty sizable money before they need to take a check. And they may go from zero to growth equity, or they may go from zero to raising a big venture round because they've been able to scale on their own without having to build out the infrastructure that a lot of companies 20 years ago, you know, had to raise big Series A or even big Series B to get to.
Jeb, I'll add one other thing that I'm thinking of that's changed. 20 years ago, most venture capitalists, if they saw a company that had its early stage financing from angels, doctors, there were doctors, lawyers, uninformed people, and it was almost anathema. If that was where the money started from, you avoided it. I think that I personally look very positively on the whole advent of informed angel investing, and we could get into the whole incubator and accelerators and everything else, but I think there's an enormous cadre of angel investors who have experience, who've done things, and are helping companies at a very early stage that were not really available, and it is changing the dynamic. I do not look on it at all as a competitive force, but I think it is a very valuable gestating force to help us.
Christoph, maybe with a little bit of a European perspective, Alan talked about the angel ecosystem here. Is that still hold true in Europe? Is that considered positive? What are you seeing out of Europe that may be similar or different than what we have here in the US?
I think the overall trend is exactly the same. So barriers to entry to kind of forming your first company, kind of get through the seed and early stages, has become feasible at a much lower cost. And then we see the same growth gap, the capital gap in the growth stage. I think the angel system was something that had to establish itself, and I think it has established itself in Europe, probably in London first. Then I think the markets in Stockholm and now Berlin have chasing deals there much more. And I think there are basically two groups, and that's probably also true globally. There's the spray and pray approach, so people who just go in and basically I'm not sure if it's really investing or trying to get away from home for a while. And then the second group is, I think, the real angels, the people who help building networks among founders, building to get to the next financing level, because I think that's exactly where you need angels the most.
So here's an interesting question. Do you compete with a rich dentist from New Jersey?
We don't, because we're growth investors. I think if he's a great dentist and a great angel, I think he is he's actually feeding my
Let's
ecosystem.
define that. What's a great angel?
I think a great angel is somebody who is really serving as almost the first unofficial board member of a founder, being able to bounce ideas off, getting critical advice, introducing him to people he should hire.
I think that's aggressive, so just sorry to interrupt. You know, traditionally, I think a great angel can be a silent angel sometimes, right? Here's my money, it's dumb money, I know it's dumb money, I'm gonna do nothing and I'm gonna walk away, right? There's something to be said about that. No, you disagree?
So, you know, I think that the acid test for an angel is when the founders of a company you invested in refer their friends, their best friends, to you as an angel for their startup. I think it is sort of a very fine balancing act between getting too involved with the company and being there when they need you. But if you're good angels, they will turn to you every time they need an advice, and you stay out whenever they need to, you know, whenever not.
I think I was trying to say that different companies need different things at different times. So one type of a great angel can be, here's my money, I'll give you as much as you need. I'm not going to get involved in any operational decisions. I'm out of your hair.
Cool.
I can think of a similar example of someone that thinks they're a great angel, thinks they're adding value, and is messing up the company, throwing a lot of, sand into the mud into the playground, and everyone's just angry at this angel but won't say it to their face. We may know some ourselves, we may not, but
I think at a time like this, when money is abundant, that entrepreneurs do have the luxury of picking sort of smart money.
Yep.
In times where the funds are tight, then you see them being less picky.
So let's talk a little bit about strategic money. And so traditionally, or how about this? I've heard a line that said, when the strategics enter, it's time to leave. And that's about the industry in general. I think we're seeing a lot of non-traditional venture capital money enter, mainly hedge fund and kind of late-stage private equity guys, these pre-IPO growth rounds that are kind of an interesting thing. There's been a number of entities, yours included, that have been in the venture industry and have been there for a long time. But it's, I think, an interesting sign that you're near a bubble when corporations that don't have venture capital arms thinks it's a really great idea to start to create one, you can usually start to see some, let's say, expectations not meet reality as that occurs. And so maybe a little bit speak for yourselves, but speak if you think that's true. Is corporate venture capital, the strength of corporate venture capital, is at an inverse proportion to the strength of the market?
All right, so there are a few questions there. One is, if a company is setting up a corporate venture group, they should be in it for the long haul, 10-year, 15-year minimum. Right, the last thing you want to do is try to say, oh, it's 1999, I see a lot of hot companies going out, how come I'm trading at 8 times earnings and these companies are trading at 1,000? So how about I invest in some of these companies? That would be great. Horrible decision. You should staff this. If you're setting this up, make sure you fund it and structure it for the long term. And also structure with investment professionals, people who know what they're doing, not someone who does biz dev deals and investing on the side. With regards to the corporate investor, we are very focused in the kind of investing that we do and things that could be of potential interest to any of our divisions. So we know what we know, but we don't go into financial services. We don't do e-commerce. We don't do hardware. We don't do semis. That's not really in our space, and we focus on what we do. The venture business is a competitive business, and every venture investor has to hustle to get into a good deal, whether you're a corporate or not. And whether you're a financial VC or a corporate strategic, you have to be able to show the value add of your funding. For us, we do similar things that any other VC would. We help with strategy, we help with hiring, we help with investment raises, we help with exits and M&A. But we also help with knowing the media sector very well. We help with getting introductions and access to all the folks within our group, within our company, and with all the other media companies in the space. So with that said, we have to keep on proving our value. You could say that if there are a huge amount of strategics coming in, is that the end? Is that a bubble? It's hard to say. I can't speak for companies who come in for the short term and flamed out their groups. Our group has been around for 10, 11 years now. We've done well strategically. We've also made pretty good returns.
Since we came out of Hubert Burda Media, so we used to be a corporate venture capitalist. I think if you believe that the companies that are built today and the companies that will be built tomorrow will not last for another 20 and 30 years, I think that's what a lot of people thought 10, 15 years ago, that you now had to kind of get into a sprint mode, develop new companies, and then you're in those companies for the long haul. But if you believe that you have to turn around your portfolio periodically from now onwards, then I think it's a good idea to actually have something like a corporate venture capital or a corporate digital investment unit, because I think that's exactly what you probably need to do, and not just for 10 years to make a transition from an analog business to a digital business, but also for transitioning your digital businesses from the 1.0s to the 2.0s to the 3.0s and so forth.
So I want to switch gears for a little bit and talk about sectors and markets. I think everybody here is give or take in kind of the media and tech sector. Let's do this kind of quick, one word category. What do you think is kind of the next big thing in the next, say, 2 to 3 years? We'll go with you, Scott. One word, boom.
Video?
Well, growth investing is not about...
One word, come on.
I don't know, I'll pass.
Services?
Have to be 2 words. Mobile and video.
Okay, good answers. What's the most overhyped sector? We'll go backwards this way, go.
Mobile and video. No, I think one of the pet peeves I have at the moment is we are going through, and this is a little controversial, I'm sure. I'm not sure if it's in this audience is controversial, but it's controversial in a lot of audiences. I honestly believe, although our lifeblood is about startups and young companies and entrepreneurism, I think we are, at the moment, over-flooded with too many startups and too many incubators and too many accelerators and too many. And unfortunately, there is far too many repetitive, duplicative companies and not enough original thinking. And I say this all the time. I wish some of the young people that are coming out that are starting companies would join some of the companies that seem to them to be exciting and learn the process of what it's like to build a company, and then perhaps go out when they really have formed their ideas. I think there are far too many people who are starting companies because it really is the thing to do today.
And
you
money's
don't start if you take a job, it's like, what's wrong with you?
And money's abundant, so they can. I think that, we're obviously in a growth cycle, and so there's capital to be had. I think that once you start to see the correction, which, by the way, I'm very bearish about the market. Actually, you guys are my crowdsourced poll. You ready? What is the probability that the market goes down 30% or up 30%? So binary, ready? Who thinks it'll go up 30% before it goes down 30%? Let's go with up first. Down 30%. It's pretty neutral. That's not too bad. So I'm bearish, and I've
Public market or
yeah,
private
public.
market?
It's all the same. Personally, I mean, they mirror each other. Real estate market. Oh, come on, really? All markets are correlated. There's going to be lags around them, but I think they're all going to give or take follow in line. No?
I don't know. I mean, I read these statistics, and I read one the other day, which all of you saw, which is seed financing is down last quarter. I cannot believe that seed financing is down. I mean, I'd like to ask the question, I'm not going to do it, how many people here in the audience think there's less seed financing? There is such an overabundance of seed financing now, and people are coming out with reports of saying there's too much seed, there's not enough seed financing. Doesn't make any sense.
So let's go back to sectors for a second. Services, right? Was that your answer? I actually am a big fan of services. You want to talk about that for a second? Tell us what you see as the opportunity there.
I think services is something that you have to understand vertical by vertical, especially if you talk to like a lot of the small business services and stuff like that. So I think that opportunity hasn't really been captured yet, and it will require local technology and vertical knowledge. And I think that's a really interesting intersection where not a lot of, I think a lot of money has been going now for the past 2 years, but I think for us as a growth firm, I think it's exactly in that spot where we want to be. So.
Moshe, do you want to come up with an answer now? We were talking about sectors.
Well, no, I don't want to talk about sectors. I think we're looking for companies making tens of millions of dollars in profits and having a sustainable business model. I think, a growth fund doesn't look for the next big thing. It looks for a sane business model. So if you ask me where we see such models, I think SaaS, when you understand this business, because it's very complex, there is a lot of confusion about what makes a good SaaS company. But when you have a good SaaS company with a sustainable model, and one of the things we do is a lifeboat test. We call customers and we ask them, if your IT budget was cut by 50%, would you keep this product or would you throw it overboard? And if they don't keep the product, it's probably not a good model.
Video?
So video is going through an enormous amount of changes. You look at the stats of how much TV people watch. Younger people are starting to watch a lot less TV. And I say TV, linear pay TV, cable packages. Younger people are watching less and less, and they're watching an enormous amount of short form ad-supported over-the-top video, like YouTube or on Facebook. The amount of video views growth in that sector is enormous. And the cost to produce this video is getting cheaper and cheaper. So you have huge demand in short form over-the-top video. Cost to produce it is plummeting because of better cameras and editing software and so forth. And the traditional media companies, Time Warner included, we're not experts in how to produce this content. We're very good at producing $100 million movies or very expensive, high-quality TV shows. Not so much about 2-minute clips that cost $1,000 a minute.
But we are both fortunate to be investor in the hottest video company.
Yeah, so both Greycroft and Time Warner were investors in Maker Studios, which traded, was announced recently. So it's a great example of a company, at the very beginning of a trend, how to produce great content for the YouTube ecosystem, how to aggregate a lot of content in the YouTube ecosystem, and how to monetize it well.
And actually, Scott, we're both, this I'm not sure of, but we're an investor in a company called Watch It, which I think has probably the most exciting new, lowest cost produced video at prices that are staggering, and that will open up, I think, a broad application of video in every phase for brands as content and news content and everything else, and developing new automated technology combined with real people.
So to mix things up a little bit, let's enter into a stage of the conversation I call my lightning round. I'm going to start a sentence. And
It comes out of Israel, by the way, technology.
I'm going to start a sentence. You guys need to finish it. You guys ready? Excellent. These are kind of random questions. Moshe, Microsoft's strategy is?
I think Satya said cloud and mobile.
Microsoft's strategy isn't. Same question.
Unfortunately, search.
Scott, I see an opportunity in China when?
Right now. Certainly look in social and in video. I mean, clearly huge mobile communities, a huge amount of gaming, huge amount of mobile video consumption. And as Alibaba showed us, e-commerce is a monster in China.
Christoph, the best part about working at Berta was?
It runs DLD.
There are so many things that it's hard to choose from. I think the best thing was that we could work in an environment that was very creative and still let us do what we had to do. I think if you do corporate venture capital and you're not shielded from each other, it becomes very, very difficult for both sides. And I think it was exactly the right balance for being at home, but still having your own room.
Good answer. Alan, why are there no women on this panel?
Why what?
Why are there no women on this panel?
Well, it's very interesting. I'll tell you a funny little anecdote. Henry Blodgett.
The right answer is you didn't put the panel together.
Henry Blodgett left a little while ago, but I have, I think, a pretty well-known reputation of hiring women, backing women. I backed many women entrepreneurs. I hired the first woman in the venture capital industry who became ultimately the chairman of the National Venture Capital Association. And Business Insider ran a story last week on those companies, those firms that were most aggressive in backing women entrepreneurs. And we were very nicely listed. About halfway through the day, the headline changed. And it said, those firms that are the least supportive to women entrepreneurs. Same story, never changed a single word. So I called Henry, I said, Henry, we didn't get enough attention with that headline. So needless to say, he was nice enough to switch the headline back to where it started. We believe, I mean, women are the same as men. I don't want to even differentiate and say they're better. We'll back.
I'll say it, women are better than men.
No, not as entrepreneurs. I wouldn't say so, but I'd say they certainly, you look at them in the absolute, and if they're good, they're good. We backed a lot of women entrepreneurs. In fact, Maker Studio was, there were two founders, a man and a woman, which was one of our biggest successes. We backed Buddy Media, husband and wife, which was a huge success. And I could list a whole group of others.
We have 3 kids in the family, 2 boys and 1 girl, and our daughter is the first entrepreneur in the family. She's now starting a new startup.
So a couple more of these. Scott, I hate Bitcoin. Do you?
How much Bitcoin do I own?
No. I said, I hate Bitcoin. Do you?
Yeah, I don't even know enough about Bitcoin to hate it. So.
Fair enough. Moshe, the most common misperception about Israel is?
That it's not a peace-seeking country.
Interesting. Germany should do what in Europe? Go.
In general, I think, first of all, they should win the World Cup. Win the World Cup, sorry, there's the soccer inside joke. I think they should lead and at the same time be careful that that Germany creates a Europe and helps creating a followership. We have the elections coming up in 25th of May, I believe, and I think there are enough worrisome signs that Europe is on the move to disintegrate, and I think we need more integration under a common leadership, not just a German leadership.
And Alan, my last question in the lightning round. The IPO window will.
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
6 months ago, 9 months ago, I gave many speeches saying that the IPO world was not in our future. When we started Greycroft, in our preamble, it said we will not invest in companies where we think the exit is dependent upon an IPO, because we looked very carefully at the exits for companies in our field, the internet, digital media world, and the average realization at that time was in the close to $80 million, because that's the reality of what companies were paying. Now, obviously, there are outliers, so we're not, tumblers and I mean, there are all kinds of outliers. But if you take the average sale of a venture capital firm that succeeded was getting sold in the 80 round. That number is now up to about 120, 130 million. The IPO window is not a reality. There are thousands of companies backed by venture capitalists every year, and it's less than 2% of them that will go public. I think, frankly, we are seeing an opening in the IPO window now. It started. I hope it doesn't get aborted too soon. And I think the IPO is and the reason it's a more of a practical reality is that they're longer in tooth, these companies. They're not just coming out and going public as we had in the early 90s and just going public with nothing. I think most companies that are going public today have more substance, and I think the public is, we've had a little bit of a setback here recently, but I think the fundamental trend is positive for IPOs in the next year.
So in our last minute, obviously this is an investor panel. We know there's entrepreneurs in the room. Let's go down the line and kind of, one good piece of advice for the entrepreneurs here. We'll do this quickly and we'll cede our time. So advice for the entrepreneur.
Never wait until you need to raise the money to start raising your money. Always build relationships with the investment community as early as possible.
Focus on deep technology and sustainable advantage.
Keep on to a good asset when it runs. Don't sell too early.
The biggest problem for young companies, in our opinion, is getting access to people who can buy their product or service. And so I would urge any company that's at a young stage to find venture capitalists like us who spend virtually all their time trying to get business for their young companies and getting them access to people who can potentially give them business.
That's great. And with that, we've hit our time. Thank you guys so much for being a great audience, and thank my panel as well.